Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Awakening with me, Raza Kazim. Differences amongst Muslim interpretations of Islam have always existed. This week we're asking, how can Muslims resist rifts and regain unity?
In recent years, existing rifts among Muslims have widened. Political and social conflicts have gripped Muslim societies, with occasional spells of violence taking place and further fueling sectarian tensions. Critics say actors in the West have exploited these differences to the detriment of all Muslims, with severe repercussions in the area of the economy. This week we went out and asked, how can Muslims resist rifts and regain unity?
Everybody is believing in Almighty Allah and Prophet Muhammad, and they all read Quran. Then why they fight each other? I don't know. They must unite each other. So this is very important.
Well, I think as a Muslim ummah, we are 1 billion plus. We seem to forget that we've got a lot more in common than differences, and I think we concentrate on the differences rather than the common ground and so on. And I think we need to really look at what is actually uniting us together and forget all those differences and actually work together, because as a Muslim ummah we are one ummah, we are actually one group. We are actually going to be, no one differentiates us from outside of the ummah.
To address these issues, we have our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan. Welcome to the program. Wa alaikum assalam. Just wanted to start off, there are a lot of rifts within the Muslim community, and there are a lot of external factors that are playing a part in that. How can Muslims, in a very general sort of way, resist some of that?
Look, I think what is very important for us is to start from the very beginning, to understand from where divisions could occur. The first thing that sometimes we are not aware of is that the two main sources of Islam are texts, Al-Quran and the prophetic traditions. As soon as you speak about text, you will have many interpretations. So we have to deal with it from the very beginning. The unity is on the sources, but you need to deal with this unity by accepting a diversity of interpretations. And this is what we have in our history. The second thing is that, of course, you will have external forces trying to divide you, and they will try to find where you are weak in this way of dealing with your unity, and it could be out of interpretations, political challenges, international challenges as well. So we need to have a very good understanding of how do we have to deal with an accepted diversity within Islam, because this is something which is important. I keep on repeating, unity is not uniformity. Now, how are you going to deal with diversity within Islam? This is where we need to get the levels that are so important in our understanding of Islam. One Islam, many interpretations.
Yeah, I want to pick up on one of the points. I mean, you talk about external factors and mention that Western colonialism, dirty word, racist concept. What role has that played in Muslim affairs in this division?
From the very beginning of Islam, when the Muslim community was dealing with tribes and clans, what they were trying to do is to divide the Muslims in order to divide and rule. This was happening from the very beginning. Then colonialism was using exactly the same methods. It's the same strategy. Is you are dealing with a country, try to find oppositions and contradictory forces within the society. So sometimes it was dealing with the Sufi trends that were used by colonial powers to divide the Muslim. Sometimes they were dealing with other so-called secular trends against Muslims and saying who are the good and who are the bad. This rhetoric that we have now in this war on terror, which is good Muslims, bad Muslims. It's a very old story. Very often, the good Muslims were supporting the colonial powers, and the bad Muslims were the people who were resisting it. So we know this. It's a political strategy, and if you are not aware of these strategies, this is why you are becoming weak. And to understand that, of course, people who want to take over or to have a political authority on one country is going to try to divide the Muslims. The sadness of the whole story is that Muslims are aware of this, and we end up just discovering it when it happens and even falling into the trap. What is happening today in the Muslim majority countries between Sunni and Shia, it's a trap. This is used by external forces to divide the Muslims and to come with details, not understanding the common challenges that we have.
And it's interesting. I mean, Western colonialism, has it used and exploited Muslims in particular, or is it something that has gone beyond the Muslim faith and been used as a way of dividing people of other religious groups? How has this phenomenon actually worked?
It's a pattern. It's exactly the same in Southern America. You have, using Christians against Christians and forces. This is the reality of colonialism. With Muslims, they did exactly the same. And you have scholars who were supporting even the colonial forces with their fatwa and their legal opinions. You had groups that were supporting, even in South Africa, you had Muslims supporting apartheid because they were supporting the government. You will find any type of scholars and any type of groups supporting the dominant powers of their time. Muslims are human beings, and among them you have courageous, resistant, and you have coward. You have people who are supporting and are going to instrumentalize Islam in order to support dictators or colonial powers. We need to be aware of this, and by being aware, this is where you can manage, you can understand how it's going to work with you if you are in a situation where you are independent, or if you are facing colonial presence, or if you are facing the international imperialism, which also has to do with power, because we're not talking now about political power, we can talk about economic power, we can talk about cultural power, and this is also going to be used against the Muslims to divide them.
Why do you feel that, this thing about dividing and conquering and so on, but why has colonialism felt the need to weaken religion? What does it fear from religion that it feels that it needs to constantly interfere and have these kind of concepts being reinvented and resold over and over again?
That's a good question that could help also to understand what is happening now. Because in history, the French power coming to Algeria was saying, if you want to take over a Muslim majority country, just separate the Muslims from the Quran. That's the point. Why? Because there is two things that are very important. The Quran and religion is part of your identity, and your identity is telling you be free and resist any type of exploitation and colonialism, for example. So they know that, or they knew in history and they know now, that if you come close to the religious reference, this is the way you are going to resist any type of colonial or colonialism. It could be intellectual colonialism, cultural colonialism, and political colonialism. The other thing is, this is what was uniting the Muslims. Al-Afghani, Muhammad Abdu at the end of the 19th century was coming to say, the only way we can come together, and even Muhammad Iqbal in India was saying, the only way is to be united through religion in order to face their attempt to divide us. So it's a unifying force, and at the same time, it's defining your identity. Identity and unity. This is exactly what they don't want, and this could come from religion, not from only nationalism. Nationalism, you can play with this, you can divide the people, but when it comes to something which has to do with your identity and something which has to do with transnational unity, this is why you are powerful.
And so why is it that when people recognize this, there are leaders, if you like, of the type that you've mentioned, who've recognized this problem, then why are people able to interpret or give that alternative interpretation, or that justifies the exploitation, justifies the people that are in power? Why does that happen? Why does it blight us? And why don't Muslims do something about it?
Because, as I said, Muslims are human beings, and you have some scholars and some human beings, when they are facing the dominant powers, they are scared and they are ready to play the game of the dominant, or of the presence of the other. And this is what we are facing now in Muslim majority countries as well as in the West. You see scholars, or so-called scholars, they are ready for everything. They are going to support dictators to protect their own position and their own privileges. So I think that this is where we need to understand. It's not because you are quoting Al-Quran and referring to the prophetic traditions that you are going to be protected from, any kind of political power and political challenges. So what I'm asking the Muslims is to stop reacting emotionally and to start being wise. And wise means understand the scriptural sources, understand the Quran and the Sunnah, and understand human beings. And human beings, you have to deal with reality. You have to be pragmatic. You have to understand this. And the first thing to do is not to start with only the external forces. They are strong out of your weaknesses. So you have to deal with your own weaknesses. And if you don't know how to manage diversity, you are going to be the first to be divided by external forces. So manage your diversity. And it means understand your diversity, deal with it, be respectful with other opinions. We are very quick to say, you are not a Muslim, you are not the good Muslim, Shia are wrong, Sunni are wrong. What's that? What is this? This is exactly what the dominants want us to do, to divide ourselves, not to be able to be respectful, and then you come and you play with this. You just manage to add to these divisions political or economic interests that are going to help you to do so.
I mean, you touched on economy, and one of the things that plays, has it played a major part in terms of promoting some groups above others? So it's a way of trying to entice people. And I mean, are there historical examples of how perhaps even the British have done things to promote certain groups or promote certain ideals that they can then use to exploit the people?
Of course, they were supporting with money, they were supporting some trends, they were supporting some organizations, the so-called Organization for Democracy. But it's not only in the Muslim majority countries. You know the problem of Muslims? They only read their own history. They don't go for South American history, African history, to understand what happened, how the Americans, how the dominant powers, the British, the Americans, the French, were dividing, putting money here, using the people and using the organizations. It happened everywhere. And we had this with Sufi groups getting lots of money, even with Salafi, very, very literalists, getting all this money. Why? And for example, now in the West, we are told you have to be citizens, you have to integrate, and so and so. And then you look at the governments with whom they are dealing. Salafi, Wahhabi. Why? Why are you supporting these people with money and opportunities? Because in fact, your discourse is against them, but your policy is using them. And we, Muslims, we look at this and we are scared to speak, we are scared to tell the truth, we are scared to denounce this, because you know what? As Muslims, if you speak out, this is a fitna, trouble, crisis. No, silence here. It's worse than just challenging the people, exposing the people who are betraying the principles of Islam. So if we want to deal with unity and diversity, first we also have to be aware and we have to be courageous. Courageous by saying there are some people in this community that are using religion and supporting powers and supporting interests that are in fact against the community. We have to expose them.
I mean, you mentioned, you talked about the Salafis, you talked about the Sufis. The people who follow those traditions are sincere.
Yeah.
Many of they're sincere in terms of what they're doing, because they believe that what they are doing is correct and so on. So why? What's the issue? What's the problem?
Yes, you are raising a very important point, because we have to stop essentializing and stop putting all the people in the same box. Within all these trends, there are people who are very sincere and in fact very, very right and upright and not corrupt people. And we have to be very cautious not to take some leaders and to blame all the other trends. No, in Islam, you have trends, and you know we have three levels. You have schools of law, you have schools of thought, and you have trends. These are levels. When we speak about schools of law, for example, we have them in the Shia tradition, we have them in the Sunni tradition. Here you have Usuli, Akhbari, and you have Shaykhi, and the other side you have Maliki, Hanbali. You have schools, and there is not a problem. We have to respect this. And then you have schools of thought, and here has to do with what is your priority. Is it rationalism? But you can be a Muslim and being rationalist as long as you rely on the text. You can be mystical in the way you read the scriptural source beyond the first meaning. You can be also a reformist, tajdidi, that reunion. All this is part of us. So we have to understand this. And then you have trends, and the trends could be literalist, traditionalist, mystical, reformist, all this. These are trends that are part of our tradition, and you have to deal with this. And you have to accept that there are different interpretations, and you don't have the only exclusive right answer, because this is not us. Our starting point in Islam is intellectual humility, accept diversity. So we have sincere people following. And now you have other people, leaders, and sometimes corrupt people who are using this and used by external forces, as we said, to divide and to promote a specific agenda. So by talking about this, we need to first have what we call in Arabic husn al-dhan, positive consideration for the people out of their sincerity. But we should not be naive. Husn al-dhan is not to be naive and say, oh, it's all, we are all nice and good. No, we have people playing with our religion. We need to be aware of this. And these people are, in fact, acting against our unity and promoting division.
Thank you for that, Tariq. Lots of interesting points that I'll come back to you on. We like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your comments. So let's see what you've sent us this week.
This week we asked, how can Muslims resist rifts and regain unity? Ismail from Spain says, this unity of Muslims is something which worries the enemies of Islam. The utmost important duty for every Muslim is to preserve and protect the Muslim unity and not to cause any division. Haider from the Netherlands says, a lack of unity among Muslims is one of the biggest issues that needs to be resolved by Muslim society. If a Muslim society is considered to be a body, then its unity is its health. And that's all the comments we have for this week. Don't forget to send us your views via Facebook or Twitter.
We picked up on some of the things of the issues that are created, and we talk about how Muslims, I mean, in a sense what you're saying is for Muslims to actually hold their leadership to account, right? Yeah. But I want to move on from that slightly and just ask, why do we not hold, as Muslims, as Muslim communities throughout, as historical basis of what has been done by Western colonial powers, the Western powers to account for the fitna that has been caused within Muslim groupings? Because there is a duty and responsibility for Muslims to hold, as rightly as you said, the leadership to account. But then what about going further and beyond that?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I would say we have three different steps and levels. The first one is to hold the community to account. Because, mind you, in Islam, the leaders are chosen by the community. At the end, we also have to ask ourselves, are we doing the job as a community, ordinary Muslims, with our leaders? Because we can't just blame the leaders. We have also to blame the community. At the end, if you are choosing or not choosing or silent, the silent majority of Muslims, the problem of the silent majority is their silence. They don't speak, they are not educated, and they don't want to be involved in this. So the first to hold into account is the community saying, at the end you will have what you deserve. If you are silent, people are going to play with you. Then the leadership.
If I can just interject here, people would say, well, we're not the experts, we don't know. It's the scholars who know. So we can only look at them and follow what they're telling us.
No,
Some of
we
them will
don't
come back to
follow
that.
we don't follow in Islam. We have to educate ourselves. And if you see in political terms that somebody is playing or is betraying, you don't need much knowledge to know this. No. This is a way, an excuse not to be involved. I agree, on some issues you are not equipped, so you can't speak. But when it comes to sincerity, when it comes to transparency, when it comes to accountability, you can do it. You should do it. You have to be involved. And then we have to hold to account the leaders. And then we also have to deal with foreign powers, but not to go straight to foreign powers or dominant powers to blame them and not look at our own weaknesses. It's a two-way process. And then, yes, we have to come and say, look, we are not going to forget what was done by British forces or French forces, colonialism, and now the United States of America and all the dominant powers. We hold you to account on this, not in the way that we want you to apologize. We want you to come back to the only right question for now and for the future: equality, autonomy, and mutual respect. And this is where we start our discussion. We don't want a dialogue where you are talking to us, looking down at us and say, you Muslims, you have to reform. Yes, we know what we have to do as Muslims is to improve our understanding of things. But you, in the West and elsewhere, we should also come to terms with your own contradictions. Very nice values, very dirty politics. So this is where we have to be. And in a way where we are aware of our own responsibility and challenging the others in a way which is equality, freedom, and no discrimination and no selective condemnation.
Interesting points. And just moving it on slightly, on the basis of the issues that have been raised and have gone on, why are Muslims not seeking, why aren't we seeking an apology? Because surely an apology is a civilized way to start. And then why aren't we then going on to asking for monetary compensation for the damage that has been done to Muslims?
You could do that, but at the end, what is the goal? What is the objective of this? It's just to get an apology for, by the way, from an Islamic viewpoint, what your father did to me has nothing to do with you. You can apologize, but at the end, I prefer for you to reform your understanding now than to apologize about the past, because many have symbolic apology. They apologize about everything, but they keep on doing things.
But they can't even bring themselves to do that.
That's true, you're right. Yes, and for example, in Spain, they did it for the Jews. They are not going to do it for the Muslims. That's exactly the point. And about colonialism, about slavery, that's fine, we can come. But I would say that this has to be done with an added trend to a deeper policy, which has to do with seeking justice now, seeking equality now, and not looking at the past and not being able to challenge the dominant powers about equality, justice, and freedom today.
Okay, so if you wanted to summarize, what do Muslims have to do to stave off the negative influences of what's actually happened, of this disunity?
Yes, I think it's we have to summarize and to come to something which is a better understanding within. What do we have to do within? First, to get more knowledge about this, the very essence of diversity within Islam. Yes, we are Sunni, Shia, and within the Sunni trends and within the Shia tradition, we have many views. We have to be trained to accept this and to be respectful. My opinion is good, but yours could be good as well. So as long as you are not saying something which is against the scriptural sources and the text, that's fine. So first, education, open-mindedness. This is something which is important. Second, to come from this to the political arena where you understand that people are playing, that you will find devil within the Muslim communities and angels outside the Muslim community. So you need to deal with people and to understand this. So awareness, political maturity and not naivety. And the third thing which has to do is to come to an ongoing struggle about accepting diversity, working for unity was our challenge, our permanent challenging of dominant powers that are trying to divide us.
Lots of interesting views that have been expressed by Tariq here. Rifts between Muslims can be emotive, and perhaps it is right that they should be. Perhaps that is an indication that Muslims care passionately about the basic Islamic principles, and that arguments are intense because the expectation of those that you're close to is higher than those who you don't expect much from. The time is up for today's topic. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for his views on this topic, and of course all of you at home for watching. Goodbye until next time and another edition of Islamic Awakening.